This is a SandyBoy Productions podcast.
Welcome to the Urban Pharmacy Podcast, where we help women remove the overwhelm of living their most holistic life. This is the place to find evidence-based nutrition tactics, healthy lifestyle and wellness tips, abundance mindset, and easily implementable low-tox living strategies so you can rise up to your full potential and protect your family's health. I'm your host, Stacey, certified holistic nutritionist and better living advocate. Now, let's get empowered with some simple swaps that make a big impact for optimal wellness.
And welcome back to the Urban Pharmacy Podcast. It is episode 57. I hope you're having a fantastic day so far. Hey, before we get into the episode, I want to make sure that you are in my private Facebook group called the Urban Pharmacy, TheherbanPharmacy. It's a private group, so it's not my public page, but it is a private group, so you'll have to go through some questions to get into it. But we're having a workshop the week of February 14th in 2022. I want to be sure that you are in it. It's called Holistic Breakthrough Live. It's for women who are ambitious, just like you, who are waiting to find the secret sauce to finding more health and wealth simultaneously. Did you know that they can actually coexist? Well, it's the truth. And for a woman like you who's really rising up to her potential, I know that you're trying to figure out how exactly to make this all harmonious and really step into that dream and ideal existence, right? Without finding these mindset blocks that you're always running into, or not having a good system when it comes to living a holistic life, or really not branding yourself and setting yourself apart. And that's what this whole workshop is for. So be sure you're over in there. It's from the 14th through the 18th. So don't miss out. And if you have any problems, just click the link down in the show notes to be added to the group. All right. So today's guest is plant-based pediatric gastroenterologist practicing in NYC, Rebecca, the kind of doctor who takes you off of your meds. Doctor, the microbiome obsessed doctor, and the girl who's huge on kindness and empathy. Spreading the word on social media that health starts in the gut is what she really does, and she's so good at it. She's also over on TikTok. So you can find Dr. Rebecca Winderman on any of our social media platforms, and we'll put those in the show notes. But I want to be sure that you listen into today's episode, because the problems that we talk about are not just pediatrics. They're really for most people in terms of digestive issues, and I don't want you to miss any of this. So without further ado, here is Rebecca. Rebecca Winderman, welcome to the Urban Pharmacy Podcast, my friend.
Hi, thanks for having me, Stacey. I appreciate it.
I am super thrilled to have you on today because, well, first off, you're a pediatric gastroenterologist, but also hilarious on Instagram. So everybody needs to, just before we even get this conversation going, everybody needs to go and follow Rebecca, Kids Gastro Doc, on Instagram, because she's like a dancing machine and it's amazing. And she's got so much energy and she has so many good tips. And I don't think really any of your tips, I mean, most of them are for kids, right? But I think that they go right over into adulthood, right? And overlap in terms of lifestyle wellness. And you are just an incredible help and resource. So, all right, Rebecca, you're a gastroenterologist. Tell us about yourself, kind of where your journey started in terms of figuring out that you wanted to take this path, and then also a little bit of how and when you became plant-based. So I just want to really know your story.
Sure. Sure. So interestingly enough, I knew I wanted to be a doctor. I had no idea about gastroenterology. I knew I wanted to work with kids. So I trained in medical school, and then I trained as a pediatrician. And then it came like my third year of residency. My last rotation was in gastroenterology, and I just fell in love with it. And I ended up doing another 3 years in pediatric gastroenterology. And, the focus, and I say this all the time, wherever I am and whomever I talk to, and if there's anything that anyone should take away from this, it should be that, as physicians, our standard medical training does not include a large portion of lifestyle medicine or integrative medicine. We don't talk a lot about diet. We don't talk a lot about exercise. We know that those are risk factors, but what we see and we focus on is once they're very sick, right? So that to me was like, and I was on social media tinkering with it here and there for a little while. I saw people, it was always like woo-ha for me. It was like, I know, I get it, but like, you also need a statin. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
But like the more that when the pandemic hit, I decided to go and be more proactive on social media. As doctors, we always, sort of cross our arms and we're like, they Googled it, like Dr. Google, but then I thought about it and I was like, as a parent, like I Google a lot of things, right? Like the first thing I do when I don't know something, I'm like, all right, let's Google it. Right. So like, I can't blame parents for doing that. I do the same thing with my health, I do it with plumbers, you know what I mean? So like, why wouldn't I my health, right?
Yeah.
Basically, I decided to just start putting out information about general GI stuff, constipation, reflux. And then I started coming across like a tribe of providers, one nurse practitioner in particular, who was actually, she's a CRNA. So she sort of introduced me to the idea of, plant-based medicine and evidence-based information regarding it. And then, my world exploded from there. And I was like, we don't talk about this enough. I mean, in medical school, I had about an hour of nutrition training, and I'm a gastroenterologist, right? Like that's part of what I do. And we never covered it. It was always diseases of the GI tract. And so I started to shift my focus on really healing myself, my own gut, and learning, what my triggers were, and then realizing that I was seeing a lot of this in clinic and I wasn't even thinking or having a discussion about diet. And so over the past 2-3 years, I have revolutionized the way that I approach health, the way that I approach health with my patients. And I've sort of become known as like, the doctor, the seventh opinion sort of a thing. And we just unlayer and unlayer and unlayer. And so that's really where I've come in my journey. And I've never felt healthier. I myself I've never really been on medications, but, for me, a lot of my ailments and a lot of where I, was struggling even mental health wise from this pandemic has changed dramatically from the, steps that I've taken lifestyle wise. But more than just diet in general, and I think that's something we focus on a lot. We can talk more about, but there are many things that affect our gut health that need to be it needs to be a holistic approach, right? Like I use meds when I do, but I don't, but diet is always a discussion that I have, lifestyle always.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. So this is kind of new for you. This whole plant-based eating situation is fairly new. This is incredible. Okay. So no wonder you still have like all the oomph behind it, because you're like, wow, I just literally transformed my life. Had I been on social media and active on social media like 12 years ago when I started this, like I would have probably been dancing too, because I felt so different. Like my entire existence changed.
Yeah.
When I went.
So I would say the dancing came first, and then people reached out to me. I'm a silly kind of a person in general. So that definitely came first. I definitely feel better, but you can, even if you go back in my TikTok content is where I started on TikTok, you'll see a lot of general information not related to lifestyle or preventative medicine. It's all, here's the medications we use for reflux, and here's how we treat inflammatory bowel disease. And so I got more and more into, and my longtime followers have sort of followed me through this journey, which has been awesome.
That's awesome.
And I'm still uncovering a lot of it, right? It's still new. So I'm doing it with everyone. It's possible. And my kid's 8. So she was 5 when this rolled down. Yeah. So
Okay. Yeah. I was going to ask. Okay. So, and you have an 8-year-old. Has she started eating more plants? Like, has she embraced this?
yeah, it's so interesting. And I didn't even notice it because I wasn't hounding her with that information. And I take the same approach with my patients. Like, I'm not into the whole diet culture. And I think that's where the pendulum sort of swinging in medicine, not like against that as well. But, for me, it's not about taking away things. It's always adding, like, how can we add more of the rainbow and fiber, right? So we have like a chart at home that has, a big rainbow, and every day she gets to check off like what colors that she ate. And, I didn't even realize all of this. And we were at Thanksgiving dinner this year, and she's gnawing on a Brussels sprout, and someone's like, whoa, that's crazy that you're doing it. And she's like, it's good for your microbiome. And they were like, what's a microbiome? So like, it really, yeah, I always say, like, when we heal ourselves, our kids heal with us. And so the best thing we can do for that is, role modeling for them. So yeah.
Okay. So speaking of kids and food, I know that a lot of our listeners just heard that, like, oh my God, her 8-year-old is eating a Brussels sprout, and they'll watch my son, like, on stories, like dipping kale in homemade date syrup. And he's like pounding it, and they're like, how do you do that? Did you have to go, Rebecca, through like a specific, kind of like a detox from, I don't know if you guys were eating like, the standard American processed foods, like that's what I grew up on. And it was a whole, like, I had to detox those taste bud situation. Oh, yeah. And I think that that's a lot of parents struggle right now. Like, they cannot figure out how to help their kids like vegetables because, quite frankly, it doesn't taste good.
Right.
So what are your takes on that?
So I didn't really grow up on processed foods. And actually, that's something that I don't even know where I got that from, but we weren't eating a ton of processed foods in the house. But, certainly things that were labeled healthy, I had no idea were not. I was never looking at ingredients, right? But, it's an addiction. Sugar is an addiction. It's like alcohol. It's like cigarettes. It really stimulates the same part of the brain and releases the same sort of chemicals, chemokines, all that to stimulate reward. And so it's one of those things that, I didn't, like I said, I'm not into like drastic change, even with my patients, right? Like, I don't just take off every single medication and then we just go, into detox mode. It's more of like, it's always adding, like, how can we add more and how can we make this fun for her? And if, I would be like, well, if you try it, and it never was like a reward thing either. It was just like, it would be interesting if you tried it. If you're not interested, no problem. But at some point, I'm having, Brussels sprouts in my, on my plate enough times, my daughter became a little bit interested, and they weren't the best tasting for her. But because things in the house started to get, more whole food, plant-based. And we, and I weaned off myself of more of the, healthy processed foods. I think that the options that she had to reach for were, less addicting. And so those taste buds sort of on their own. Yes, you're right. They have to, right? Because get rid of sugar, that apple tastes so delicious, right? Yeah. And that's what we're really meant to be eating. So for me, it was more explaining to her what our body really, really loves and how excited these little bugs get when we get to feed them. Like, putting it in just exciting terms for her was helpful for that. Look, she still eats chocolate to this day, and I can't, and it's like, and I'll be honest, so do I. Dark chocolate is like, and some of these nut butters are probably also, like, I'm not perfect. Sometimes I eat cookies to death, like vegan cookies, and so it's all about like a balance and no shame and just pure joy, excitement, and like, and good energy.
I love it. That's funny. I think it was the Plantrition conference a few years ago. Like a few of the doctors like got up, and maybe you've been there, and like they were talking about like, yes, I still eat chocolate. Like, and yes, like, I think that's like a debatable thing because it's like the oil in the sugar, and it's like, but it's dark, like super dark. Exactly. And it's, it's a journey.
I've never done well with dairy. So for me, like the dairy thing wasn't an issue, but, yes, even like the, vegan cookies, like people often don't realize, right? I'm sure you get this all the time too, where it's like, but it was vegan, right? But it's like, if you think about it, like a Twizzler is vegan, right? It doesn't have any animal products in it, right? But like, it's not plant-based, so just that awareness, like where we're going with.
Twinkies are vegan too, and so is Diet Coke, but or Coke, but like we don't want to be eating that every single day. So people need to be aware of that. Okay. So you've got your daughter on board. She's eating more veggies. How has this gone with school? I just want to keep diving a little bit more with her. Like, has she been influencing anybody around her? Is she bringing her lunch? What does that look like from a gastroenterologist mom?
Yeah. So I'll tell you, I'll be perfectly honest, it's really been the past 3 years or so that she's been kind of entirely plant-based, and I'm a single mom, and at her dad's house, he's healthy, but he's not entirely plant-based. He doesn't do red meat, but other than that, he does chicken and fish, which is fine. That's also something that I've want to encourage people to do, is that you don't have to go full force, and, mental health also matters in the process. For sure. But certainly we've always been big on fruits and vegetables in the house, and I'm really blessed to have a kid that really loves fruits and vegetables. So for her, it wasn't such a big transition, but I will tell you that when her friends come to our house, they definitely try new, fruits and vegetables. And the moms are like, listen, Sally is not going to eat, they already know, my house, she's like, I sent her with a snack. She's not going to eat your chili. I promise you, I can't even mix a salad, and then it's no problem. The snack is there. And then it's I always have the mixed version of everything, and then everything separate, which I find makes a huge difference with kids. They don't want it all together. So in terms of her school, I also am blessed that her school has a no sugar policy there. So that has been super helpful. No processed foods, really. They don't say it, but they'll be like, barbecue chips is not really what we're looking for. So, I've been lucky in that regard, but when people come here, she tells them all about microbiome, and she knows, how we really can make our body so healthy by what we put in our body and how we think and feel. So, yeah.
Have you ever heard of the book called We Are What We Eat? I believe that's what it's called. Oh, gosh.
I've heard of it. I want to read that. That's a great idea. I'm going to add that to my list.
We will add that to in the show notes so that people can read it. It is so good, Rebecca. It goes, from chewing and then down the esophagus and what happens. Cohen knows
book, or it's
a children's book.
Oh,
it's really, really good. But it's a little high level for my 4.5-year-old, but he's already talking about this is good for my immune system. This is good for my gut bugs. He has no idea what you're saying, but
but it's the idea of we didn't have any awareness of that, right?
Yeah.
For me growing up, it was a can of string beans was vegetable. We knew we had to have a vegetable on the table, but it was that plate of protein, starch, vegetables. And it was didn't matter what it was or where it came from, so it's all emerging too. Our parents, I didn't know better 10 years ago is when we really microbiome research started to boom. So
now I'm teaching my parents about it. So but it's a whole fun circle. But okay, let's shift a little bit more now into your practice and what you're seeing with children on a normal basis, and how we can help our listeners, especially moms, and just anybody that might be dealing with gastrointestinal issues, which I feel is pretty much everyone in some capacity, because we're overstressed, we're overprocessed, we're not sleeping well, we're not exercising, we're not drinking enough water, we're definitely not eating enough fiber.
Right.
At all. So, I know that you just today got home from an emergency surgery. So I know you're doing emergency surgeries. Let's talk about that first before we get into then what you're seeing in your practice. Give us the PSA, please.
Oh, yes. So okay, if there's one thing anyone here should take away from this podcast, it would be this: listen up, write it down, figure it out, ingrain it into your brains, is that button batteries, or those little round batteries that we put into remote controls or watches, or sometimes those light up toys, are lethal. The way that they are ionized, it sticks to the esophagus, and there's your food pipe, and it makes a reaction there, and it actually burns. And so I had a patient who actually the button battery burned through the food pipe, and so thank God the child lived. But it's absolutely insane that they're still on the market. So if you have electronics that have button batteries and you cannot avoid it, please do not keep extra button batteries around that are in an open space for children to be accessible.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Okay.
Yes.
Haunting, but like so needed. We need these reminders and, little.
The same is true for rare earth magnets, those beaded magnets, because what ends up happening is they attract to each other in the intestines, and they make holes. And so we've had kids with perforated intestines from these rare earth magnets. So button batteries, rare earth magnets, out of the way from children, please.
Little bouncy balls, marbles.
Yes.
No.
Well, yeah. So those I can fetch out. Penny quarters seem to be like kids taste like the taste of quarters. I always tell them you should have swallowed 100. It's not going to cover the bill, but all right, a quarter, I'll do it too, but those are, thank God, not lethal, and obviously unless they obstruct an airway, but button batteries and rare earth magnets are big ones. Yeah.
Gosh, okay. Good to know. I don't even know what those rare earth magnets are, so I'm going to need to look those up and make sure nobody buys those for Cohen.
Yeah.
Hey friend, before we get too far into this episode, I want to be sure you know about how the environment plays a role on your overall health. For over a decade, I've been learning so much about the lack of health regulation in the personal care and food industries, and that's actually one of the reasons why I started this show. You deserve to know how to protect you and your family from unwanted body burden, and I share further information about how to make better choices and vote with your dollar in our private Facebook community called The Urban Pharmacy. On that note, I want to let you know about one of the easiest ways that we've switched to safer, and that's through my favorite clean beauty brand called Beauty Counter. Your skin is your largest organ, and what you put on it every day matters a lot. And with a low carbon footprint, cruelty-free formulations, and high-performing results, I haven't found a better beauty brand than Beauty Counter in over 5 years of working with this mission-driven brand. To learn more and shop clean, head to mybetterbeauty.com.
Okay, so now let's talk about what are the common things that you're seeing parents bringing their kids in for? I mean, I don't know how old do pediatrics go up to?
So I see up to 21 in my clinic.
Oh,
so,
okay.
Yeah, I start from infancy to there. So
are you seeing a majority of younger patients, or is it kind of even?
So I see a lot of school age children. And then I see probably, I would say about 60% school age kids, and then 40% real teenagers and high school students, almost college ready.
Got it. Okay. So what are the most common things? I'm sure that you have a lot of complaints coming at you and things that you're dealing with and helping people with, but like, if you had to pick the top, maybe 3 things that you're coming across normally, what are they?
Yeah. So I would say, the top 3 things, in order of, frequency in which I see them would be constipation in school age kids and constipation in, teenagers. Those would be 1 and 2. And the third thing I see a lot of is irritable bowel syndrome, or what we call functional GI disorders. So where, there's actually not a damage in the lining. There's no actual disease. So if you took a biopsy, you wouldn't see disease there, but it produces a lot of GI symptoms. And we now know they're connected: gut brain axis and many other things that are involved in those symptoms too. But those are the 3 I see hands down in order.
How are you diagnosing irritable bowel disease?
Yeah.
Syndrome?
So the thing I always tell, patients that IBS or irritable bowel syndrome is a diagnosis of exclusion, meaning that, there are no what we call red flag signs. So for me, those are abdominal pain that wakes a child up in the middle of the night, blood in the stool, weight loss. Weight loss is a huge red flag for me. No child should not be not losing weight, not only not losing weight, but should not be not gaining weight, meaning every child should gain weight between the ages of 0 and 18. Although I get a lot of flack from that because there's a huge obesity, issue going on in the world. But from a general standpoint, a kid that's growing along, let's say the 50th percentile for their, age in weight should continue to grow on that same percentile. So for me, many of our GI disorders, including inflammatory bowel disease, celiac disease, can present with weight loss as their first sign before they have any GI symptoms. So that to me is, if all those things are okay, I may or may not get blood work, but, the typical IBS patient comes into me with, I have generalized abdominal pain, it's sort of all over. It's cramping after I eat. I'm in the bathroom immediately after I eat. Sometimes it's diarrhea. Sometimes it's constipation. I never have blood. It never wakes me up in the middle of the night. But and mom will tell you, mom always says that he's always in the bathroom all day in the bathroom. So I've seen a lot more of that with the pandemic because of stress and, the foods that people, we were eating at home. So that's really, it is a clinical diagnosis. So I usually, once I have, if I have labs, I decide to do labs and those are normal. Sometimes I'll do stool studies if I'm in between, and no red flag symptoms. I'm comfortable sort of treating conservatively in that way. But I'm really tight on follow up, especially at the first diagnosis or when I think it's, IBS, because, things change, which is what I tell my patients also. Sometimes I'll be the seventh opinion and they'll be like, well, doctors 1 through 6, I told them about this and they ignored it. And, thank God you're the one that found it. And I said, I always tell them, I say, disease never takes a vacation. So what may have looked like something that was benign, doctors 1 through 5 and even 6, now is very clear to me because it has taken time. Right. So just making sure we monitor, because, sometimes, patients with inflammatory bowel disease many times also have irritable bowel syndrome, and it's hard to differentiate. So really making sure that we are very clear on signs, symptoms, and understanding when things change, and when they need to sort of get in contact with me, is important. So I would say that, yeah.
So what is your typical treatment are you able to give your patients lifestyle modification, techniques for IBS? And also what are your, medications that you're giving for that?
Yeah. Interesting. Because what we used to say is we used to be like, oh, take some Metamucil, you could try peppermint oil if you want. And then here's also an antispasmodic. I'll write you a prescription, something that will stop cramping. Right. Mm-hmm. Now, we have more information on, gut-brain axis. So, the first thing that I tell my patients, hands down, is what we call a symptom diary. Every person with irritable bowel syndrome has different symptoms, different triggers, and different presentations, which is difficult and tough, but also reassuring, because it means that, you don't need to eliminate every single thing in the world that every person has ever said triggered their IBS. And we can really start honing in on what's triggering your IBS. So there are many great resources, and I have no relationship to this app, but I like the app Bowel, Bowelle. It's one of many symptom diaries, and it's an app on the phone, and it keeps track of, how many stools you had a day, how large were the stools, what were the consistency, what did you eat, did you exercise, what's your stress level, how's your mood, how long did you sleep? Those are all things that I have discussions about with all of my patients, including the younger ones. I mean, I may or may not prescribe a medication, but either way, you and I are going to be having a discussion about diet and lifestyle. Regardless of how bad your disease is or how benign your disease is, if you even have a disease, that discussion is going to happen in my office. And, for better or for worse, like, I do take longer with my patients. But it pays off in the end, keeping them healthy and bringing them off medications. So I would say that, so that's the first, right? And then the next thing I would say is, we always talk about so diet is super important, right? So I work closely with dietitians who specialize specifically in irritable bowel syndrome. And I think it's so important to do that because, the first and, most successful line of treatment is this low FODMAP diet. And people tend to think that they need to be on this low FODMAP diet for the rest of their lives. So FODMAPs are a group of carbohydrates that we've identified that are triggers for irritable bowel syndrome. However, it is such a large group of foods, including a lot of prebiotic fiber foods like vegetables and fruits, certain ones, that, what we realized is that really what they need is either a 4 or 6 week trial off of all of them. And then working with a dietitian to slowly introduce each category of those and identify triggers so that you're not avoiding all of it. So in terms, I am open to working with other dietitians as well. I think that dietitians and doctors should talk to each other just like diet and gut talk to each other. So that's important. And then I would say the third and final thing is environment. So sitting, in silence or meditating. I don't like to call it that. But, my friends make fun of me because they'll say like, oh, she's just going to tell you to meditate, forget it. But, the power of mindfulness has been shown in the literature and in the data, and it's an ancient tradition. And the gut brain axis is really what controls our IBS and our GI symptoms. So to only focus on diet and not reduce stress, is not going to be a complete holistic approach to our gut. And there's so many things that affect our gut that if we don't sort of address all of them, we can't expect to feel entirely better. So environment would include stress reduction, sleep, 6 to 8 hours of good sleep a night, and avoiding toxins like alcohol, cigarettes, coffee sometimes can be a trigger for some people. So just bringing some more awareness to our environment is what I ask my patients to do. So those are my approaches.
And adding some more plants to their actual physical environment.
Right. Exactly. Things. No, 100%. Actually, it's so funny. Yeah. It's like, nobody heard this, but it's the first thing I mentioned in your room. I was like, where'd you get those? That's amazing. I'm already like planting my plants in my living room as well. So, it's so important to be also in nature. We know that, right. Like playing in the dirt and getting out in nature and sort of, suburban and, environment, kids that grow up in those types of environments end up, being in a healthier state from a GI perspective, even asthma, eczema, allergies, those things. So your environment plays a huge role
on like so much. Okay. Yeah. I love that you brought that up. So, okay. Now let's kind of work our way back up to those two other things. You said constipation in adolescent, in teens, which I really want to talk about because that hits me personally for sure. And then adolescent, younger children dealing with constipation. Yeah. I'm sure that the causes kind of overlap, but I'm sure that there's definitely some differences between the ages and what's going on as well. So for me personally, I definitely dealt with constipation. And took a laxative 1 or 2 times because my mom had it at the closet and she's like, oh, take this, it'll help you. And then I got hooked on them for 6 months, 9 months, I think, during my high school years. And I remember that very vividly. That was a huge pivotal moment and like something that I look back on my story and I'm like, wow, I don't want people to feel that way. And I don't want that to happen to anybody. And, I was just so uncomfortable, man. Like, I just remember I was just like, my stomach hurt every time I ate. I probably had IBS. That wasn't even talked about back then. I probably had IBS. But I was constipated, couldn't go to the bathroom. I loved fruit, ate tons of fruit, but then the rest of my food was dairy and processed toaster strudels and all the Burger King and stuff like that. So, what's happening to us? Why are we so constipated? How can we help? Let's start with the teens and then we'll get into the littles.
Sure. So they are different, entirely different causes, although yes, of course they overlap. So with teens, it is 100%, diet and lifestyle. So, the fact that we have such a sedentary lifestyle that we're not getting up, walking around. Look, our GI tract, yes, it has a brain of its own. It has movements of its own, but getting up, walking around does stimulate our GI tract, and our entire digestive system it is just more alert and aware and active when we move. So that's one. The most important one, though, I would say, is fiber. Kids are not eating enough fiber. And the thing that I tell parents is, and they'll tell me, oh, Sally doesn't like broccoli. And I'll say, that's okay. Sally doesn't have to like broccoli. So I often recommend that, take Sally to the grocery store, and Sally, next time you go to the grocery store, I want you to pick one new vegetable that you're willing to try. Mom will show you which ones that you can pick from, and you try one new vegetable. So when I see you back in 4 weeks, I want to hear, and you have to try it at least 3 times, and then you'll write down whether you liked it or you didn't, right? So when they come back to me, they have 4 new vegetables that they've tried, and it's not an overwhelming amount of cut your plate in half and fill it with vegetables and da, 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 da. And so it's they start to become aware of, it's sort of also in the kitchen, getting them involved in cooking. I love that idea too. And I bring my daughter in as well. She peels, and she's getting better at the cutting, but, just the idea of understanding foods and understanding what constitutes what, I think helps kids a lot. So adding fiber. Another way to add fiber, and I always tell parents this, is change from white bread, white rice, white pasta to brown bread, brown rice, brown pasta. That is an easy switch that will hands every kid I see is I like pizza, pasta, chips. Blah, blah, blah. Okay, fine, no problem. If we can even just switch to whole wheat in those categories, that will automatically add fiber, right? And then again, the same idea of just, stress reduction is a huge role in it, right? So practicing mindfulness, making sure you get out in the open air and you get fresh air and you're in nature. And those are really the main reasons why teens specifically are constipated. They don't pay attention to what they're eating. And so they'll go to school and they have school lunch. And a lot of times I'll tell patients, change nothing. Let me see you back in a week, write down everything you're eating. And that even brings awareness to oh my God, I didn't put any fruits or vegetables in my body for a week. And they start to understand, okay, so I have control over this. I can help. I know what's, what has now a lot of fiber, and I know what I need to do to get, how I can get away with, adding my fruits and vegetables in, and what will produce a good stool, what won't. And just that empowerment, understanding, and bringing awareness to all aspects of it is really where I see the success in the teens. So yeah, fiber. The next one is water. Kids are not drinking enough water. I don't drink enough water. And I always tell them how much is enough. Should it be 8 glasses? Should it be 6 glasses? And I always say this, if you go to the bathroom and you pee and it's yellow, you're not drinking enough water. Pee should be clear. So, don't focus on, you don't have to go out and buy big fancy water bottles and start keeping track. When you go to the bathroom and you pee and it's yellow, drink another glass of water and just try to remind yourself, right? So just taking away all this shame of Sally doesn't like to eat vegetables and I make them and she doesn't eat them and I buy them and I throw them out. And then also she doesn't drink water. I send her with a water bottle every day and it comes back full, it's all right, let's bring some, because kids are 16, 17, they're going away to college soon, right? They're going to have to start learning how to take care of their bodies and how to take care of their health and what makes them feel good. So I would say empowering teens to understand that. The second thing, and equally as important, is sitting on the toilet twice a day with your feet flat on a step stool, no iPad, no iPhone, no books, timer for 5 minutes, and they can blow balloons, they can sing a song, they can blow bubbles, anything that sort of puts pressure down, right, on the diaphragm. And when that 5 minutes is up, it's not, did you sit on there long? No, it's great job. You sat on the toilet. Come on off. We'll put a check mark next to it. And so they do it in the morning and the evening. Kids, even teenagers, don't want to poop in school. So if we can set them up for the best chance of success, evacuating them before and after. So school-age children withhold, teenagers, not enough fiber. Both of them can benefit from sitting on the toilet and eating more plants.
Okay, so let's talk about sitting on the toilet with a stool, because that is something that's game-changing. Totally game-changing. So squatty potty or just a little cheapo.
Yeah, we we used to say phone books even, when back in the day when we had phone books. It doesn't be a fancy situation at all, but just the positioning of your legs, opening up that angle in your pelvis to be able to evacuate. This is the way we were made as humans. Our anatomy is not meant for sitting upright in this like L-shaped position. We're supposed to really be squatting. So, that is a game changer for a lot of people, squatty potty 100%. But yeah, it doesn't have to be that. It can be just even a step stool, anything just to get the legs a little bit higher. But yes, that alone can change things for children.
I mean, we use that at our house like all the time. Like, I mean, it guys, just trust us. It feels so much better. Like when you go to the bathroom, you do not have to like stress your body, and it should be a happy experience.
You avoid all these things that come from straining, right? Like hemorrhoids and fissures, all that stuff. Yeah. So you're right. It should be a happy experience.
And then let's talk about withholding. I can't remember exactly what it was called. Like, is that messing up with the like peristalsis, like our natural, like, rhythm of what's happening when we hold? I mean, obviously we're getting constipated from it, but what is that medical terminology?
Yeah. So what ends up happening is that, I think what you're referring to is when they have stool accidents.
We're
right.
Like, so it backs up into your large intestine.
So you can become impacted with stool. So what ends up happening is, we eat, it goes down our food pipe into our stomach and then into that spaghetti, picture we always see, those are our small intestines. And then it enters into the colon, which is really what produces our stool. So it goes from, one side all the way down, and then it hits the rectum. And that's where our stool is held. And there's a little sensory, a nerve that goes to the brain that senses when there's stretching, which means that there's poop there. And it tells our brain it's time to go. Kids that have had a hard stool or, a fissure or any sort of pain from stooling will then in their brain obviously say, I don't want to do that. And they hold. So the longer you hold, the more poop gets in the rectum and it stretches out the rectum. And then that sort of inhibits or interferes with your brain sensing it's time to go. And so what ends up happening is the new stool, the liquid, comes around and leaks out, and the solid stays behind the impacted stool. And so you have these kids that have poop accidents and the parents coming in and saying like, he's driving me nuts. Like Johnny he says he doesn't know when he has to go, but he's been potty trained for 6 years now. What's going on? And so, explaining that and understanding those are really the kids that are going to need some Miralax, bring down that rectum size. That's the point I never want to get to. That's why I always start very clearly with make sure when you're potty training, you're sitting on the toilet twice a day. So and that's called encopresis. So the leaking of stool. Yeah.
Paresis. I knew that there was like something.
Yeah. Exactly.
Okay. So, all right. We know that lifestyle stress is definitely impacting teens at a high level. That's really impacting our gut. But dietarily, Rebecca, if you were just to give us some for constipation, especially specifically, for really all ages, I'm sure it's pretty similar. What would you say are your top 3 to 5 things to start adding? And perhaps I know that we're really liking the abundant mindset and we're really liking the add additional thing, but are there some things that would benefit us from being slowly taken out?
Yeah. So, the foods I would say that are excellent, and really high in fiber and, I love wheat bran. Wheat bran is insane. It's literally, it comes in a bag and it's like, it's grand. It's almost like flour. And like 6 tablespoons of that is some ridiculous amount of fiber. I don't even know how much, maybe like 6 or 7 or 8 grams of fiber, something stupid. And, it tastes like, has like maybe a little nutty taste to it, but you can sprinkle it on anything. And I've had patients just fly with that. So that would be, that would be the first thing that I would say. That's like my favorite high fiber food for kids who aren't really into eating fruits and vegetables. The next few ones I would say are berries or any fruit or vegetable with skin is like sweet potatoes are great if you can get the skin in. Blueberries are fabulous as well. bell peppers are amazing. Those are also very high in fiber. I often give my patients like a sheet, but you can Google it, high fiber fruits and vegetables, and it'll tell you the serving size and how much fiber is in it. And kids need about 15 to 30 grams of fiber at minimum a day. Mm-hmm. So, these are things that are easy for me to give out and to recommend. But if your kid doesn't like those things, that's fine too. Just finding anything that has, but yeah, those are really high fiber foods, the wheat bran, berries, or any fruit and vegetables with peels on them. In terms of getting rid of things, I'll reframe that and say substituting. So substituting. Yeah. Cutting down on rice and processed carbohydrates. So white bread, the Wonder Bread. I always tell my patients this is how you know if it's processed. If you put it on the table and in 3 or 4 days it doesn't grow mold, it's processed. Because at the end of the day, and I'm not talking about canned products, right? Preserved products, different, right? Because at the end of the day, we want to eat things that everything has a microbiome. And that microbiome is going to feed your microbiome and help you poop and help you have GI symptoms, right? And so you want to consume things that are also have their own. When you start stripping that away and putting preservatives in there, you get rid of that microbiome. You basically detach any health value from that piece of food. It becomes just garbage and junk. So anything that you could eat that is more fresh. And taking away the boxed and the processed breads. I see a lot of that. Oh, but I give him a whole wheat, blah, blah, blah. Right. But I don't know if that's a fresh piece of whole, right? So there's so many confusing labels and all this, right? So I would say cutting down on like white rice, white pasta, white bread. Those are usually then for school age kids, milk seems to be a big one. How much?
I was waiting for that.
Yeah. I always, and I'll tell you, I'm guilty of it because I really don't always remember to ask that question, especially to like a 6, 7, 8-year-old, because those are infant things, right? Like how many ounces and how many hours, right? Those are things that I ask infants. But then when I start to, sometimes it takes a second visit for me to be like, all right, but what is Johnny drinking? And they'll be like, well, he has milk in the morning and after. Okay, but what size? Oh, like the 16 ounces. I'm like, okay, so this kid's having 48 ounces of whole milk a day. Milk will constipate you. Yeah. Unless you're lactose intolerant, milk is a huge reason for constipation that I see often in school age kids. So yeah.
Yeah. I feel like dairy is, I don't remember which doctor, some doctor said it's the most constipating food in the world. So
yeah, particularly milk. Yeah, it is. And it's like, yeah, it's surprising when you can take away and add things and change around diet. I'm almost out of business at that point.
Right. Yeah.
So, yeah. But it's important. I mean, and it's important to know that we have control over our health also, which is empowering.
Which is a really good segue to a question that I ask all of my guests, Rebecca. What does holistic living mean to you?
Yeah. So, to me, that means, looking at all aspects of health, what is involved in health, what affects my health and what affects my happiness also will affect my health. So the idea of, a clean diet, right? And I'll be the first one to say I'm learning from you about clean products too. So thank you for your content as well. But, things that we don't think about, often are involved in sort of seeping into our environment that we're not aware of. So bringing awareness to things that, we come in contact with all the time. Am I stressed when I drive to work? Am I, do I need to wake up a little bit earlier? Do I need to get up and work out before I go to, those types of things? Living a holistic lifestyle for me means paying attention to food, how my body feels, where my mental health is at, how the area that I'm living in, making that vibrant and happy. And I think paying attention to just how my body and my mind are feeling, and then sort of trying to dissect, okay, what is it that I'm coming in contact with on a daily basis then? And let's start to maybe make some small changes.
Absolutely. I love it. So good. Yeah. And just being so aware of how all of that just does affect your mind and how they work so synonymously, like together. is so important. So Rebecca, you have been a gem and just full of so much knowledge. I appreciate you and your time. And where can we follow you?
Yes, I'm a kids gastro doc. I'm on TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn. You pick it. Clubhouse. I'm there.
Awesome. All right. Well, we will be sure to find you. All right. Thank you, my friend.
I'm over here cheering you on because you just finished another episode of The Urban Pharmacy. For today's show notes, head on over to theurbanpharmacy.com and be sure to join us inside our private Facebook group called The Urban Pharmacy, where we share inspiration, live trainings, and holistic living tips to help you build community and the healthy lifestyle that you've always wanted. If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure you hit that subscribe button and please consider leaving us a 5-star review. Before we connect again on the next show, follow me on Instagram at The Urban Pharmacy. That's urban with an H and pharmacy with an F. And I can't wait to hear your wellness journey as we get to know each other better. You know, there's truly no better time than now to level up your life, and I am so proud of you for showing up today. Until next time, be well, Health Crusader.